My name is Irene Willette, and I'm 32 years old. 5 years ago, my life changed in a way I never could have imagined, all because of a single lie my sister told my parents. She said I had dropped out of medical school. That lie cost me my family. They cut me off completely, blocked my number, ignored every attempt I made to reach out. They weren't at my residency graduation. They weren't at my wedding. For half a decade, I wasn't a daughter, a sister, a family member. I existed in their minds only as the girl my sister said I was. A failure. Distant, unworthy of their love. I grew up in Hartford, Connecticut. Our family wasn't rich, but they were steady, middle class, hardworking, and obsessed with appearances and obedience. My father, Jerry, managed a manufacturing plant. My mother, Diane, did part-time bookkeeping. They had 2 daughters. Monica, my sister, was the golden child. She could charm any adult at any dinner party. She was beautiful, confident, and clever. She was everything they wanted in a daughter. And then there was me. I was quiet, invisible, not rebellious, not difficult, just the girl who buried her nose in a textbook while Monica performed on the stage of life. The difference between being forgotten and never being seen is subtle, but devastating. I remember the state science fair in 8th grade. I had worked for months on my project, building circuits, testing variables, learning everything I could about bioelectric signals. I came home with a second-place ribbon. My parents barely glanced at it. Dad muttered, "That's nice, Ree," and turned back to the newspaper. No questions, no pride. Just a quiet acknowledgement of existence. Meanwhile, Monica had a community theater performance the same weekend. Guess who got the standing ovation at the dinner table? I told myself it didn't hurt. I told myself I didn't need their approval. I poured everything into my grades, my AP classes, my applications. If I couldn't be the daughter they noticed, I would become the daughter they could not ignore. And for one moment, it almost worked. The day I got accepted into Oregon Health and Science, university's medical program, 3,000 miles from Hartford, something changed. For the first time, my father looked at me differently. He read the acceptance letter at the kitchen table, eyebrows raising slowly. "Oregon Health and Science," he said, testing the words. "That's a real medical school." Then he looked at me. "Maybe you'll make something of yourself after all." Renee. It wasn't a compliment. Not really. But it was as close to pride as I'd ever received. My mother called my aunt that night, called neighbors, shared the news with anyone who would listen. There was real pride in her voice. And then there was Monica. She was visiting that weekend, 22 years old, working a decent marketing job. She smiled at the news. But her eyes weren't smiling, they were calculating, measuring. I didn't notice it then. I thought she was tired from traveling. I thought maybe this was the start of a connection, finally, between us. Monica started calling more often, 2-3 times a week. "How's packing going? Who's your roommate? What's Portland like?" She asked for every detail. I told her everything, gratefully. Every class, every friend, every vulnerability. I thought she was finally my sister again. But 3rd year of medical school changed everything. My roommate, my best friend, Sarah Mitchell, was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer. She had no family, no one to lean on. I became her support system. I took a formal leave of absence, all documented, all approved. I drove her to chemo. I held her hand in the middle of the night when the pain got too much. And I told Monica, her voice was syrupy, sympathetic, reassuring, "Oh my God, Rye, I'm so sorry. Take all the time you need. I won't say a word to Mom and Dad." 3 days later, my world collapsed. My parents called. The lie Monica had planted, that I had dropped out, was reckless, had a troubled boyfriend, suddenly became the truth in their eyes. Dad's voice was flat, arctic. Monica showed us proof. "Don't call this house until you're ready to tell the truth." I was 3,000 miles away, sitting in a plastic chair next to Sarah's hospital bed, with $46 in my checking account and no family. Every call I made, 14 in 5 days, went to voicemail or was blocked. Emails, handwritten letters, even my aunt's attempts to advocate for me were ignored. Every effort returned unanswered, unopened, rejected. I was gone to them, erased by a lie. Sarah's illness and eventual death were solitary battles. I held her funeral with 6 attendees. I cried for 3 months straight. No one from my family came, no one called. But tucked inside Sarah's copy of Grey's Anatomy, I found a sticky note. "Finish what you started. Irene, become the doctor I know you are. And don't you dare let anyone, especially your own blood, tell you who you are." It was a choice. Crumble or climb. I chose to climb. I re-enrolled, worked extra jobs, survived on hospital cafeteria food, and immersed myself completely in medicine. No family, no safety net. My focus became the life I could build with my own hands. And by the time I graduated on time, matched into a surgical residency, and became chief of trauma surgery at Mercy Rest Medical Center, I had built a life my family would no longer recognize. But the hollow ache remained, the space where a family was supposed to be. Every holiday, every Thanksgiving, I felt it like a phantom limb. Aunt Ruth kept me tethered to what remained of my family, but it was a thin thread. I didn't ask about my parents. I didn't ask about Monica. My life existed outside of their control, outside of the lies that had defined my past 5 years. And then one day, it all came crashing back. I woke up that morning with a weird mix of exhaustion and adrenaline. My phone buzzed with a reminder. Check on residency applications. I ignored it. Yesterday's whirlwind, the confrontation, the truth, the coffee shop meeting with Monica was still spinning. In my mind, like a slow-motion storm, I couldn't believe how fragile the world had seemed and how strong I'd felt at the same time. 5 years of silence, of being erased, and suddenly all of it was laid bare. The family, the lies, the missing milestones, it was over. Or maybe it was just beginning. Because truth isn't a one-time fix. Truth is messy, and sometimes messy is the only way to survive. I made coffee, letting the dark liquid fill the silence of the house. Hippo stretched across the living room rug, tail wagging lazily as if nothing had changed in our world. But everything had. 5 years ago, I would have been curled up in a dorm bed, crying silently, listening for a phone ring that would never come. Today, I was Irene Ulett, MD, chief of trauma surgery, a woman who had clawed her life out of chaos and built something real. And still, there was a hollow space, where my family should have been cheering me on instead of letting Monica lie. I pulled out my phone, scrolling through messages I'd ignored over the past week. Aunt Ruth had sent a short note. They're awake. They're asking questions. Be ready for calls. Stay calm. Stay calm, simple words. But my chest tightened. I knew exactly what was coming. My parents' panic, their guilt, their attempts to piece together a world they'd refused to understand for 5 years. I had rehearsed this scenario 1,000 times in my head while scrubbing into surgeries, but now, with it about to happen, rehearsals didn't matter. Reality didn't follow scripts. The first call came from my father. Irene, can we... I silenced the ringtone. Not yet. I needed to control the timing. 5 years of being silenced had taught me one thing. Control was power. Instead, I texted Ruth. Send them a summary of surgery. No explanations yet. Just facts. They need the baseline before the conversation. Her reply came instantly. Done! They'll read it now. It wasn't revenge. It was precision. Half an hour later, my hospital pager beeped, a non-emergency. Just a routine note about a patient transfer. I let it sit. I needed these moments to collect myself. Even as a chief, even as someone who had performed life and death surgeries in the past, I realized I hadn't prepared for this. The first interaction with my parents since the blackout. By noon, the waiting room was empty except for my parents, sitting rigid in the same chairs that had been there 5 years ago. Dad's hands were clasped together, knuckles white. Mom's eyes were red-rimmed, her hair pulled into a messy bun. Their faces had aged, not from time, but from worry, regret, and the weight of a lie they'd believed without question. I stepped into the waiting room, scrubs pressed, badge shining under the fluorescent lights. Everything about me was the same, yet nothing was. The quiet click of my shoes on the floor echoed like a drumbeat of authority. This was my world, my space, and for the first time in years, they had no say in it. Mom, Dad, I said, calm, deliberate. The surgery went well. Monica is stable. She's in ICU. That's all you need to know for now. Mom blinked, lips trembling. Dad's jaw worked like he was chewing on a problem too big for him to swallow. They were both looking at me, not just as their daughter, but as someone who had existed beyond their control for half a decade. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, until my father finally spoke, voice low, hoarse. We didn't know. We believed her. Everything you thought, I interrupted softly, was based on a story Monica told. You didn't check. You didn't ask. You didn't see me for 5 years, even when I tried. That's not me punishing you. That's you choosing to believe a lie. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Irene, no, I said, raising a finger. You listen first, then we can talk. Right now, you just listen. And I told them. Not an angry, dramatic rant. Just facts, concise and undeniable. The emails, the letters, the blocked calls. The leave of absence documentation. Sarah's hospital stay. The way I'd kept her alive when no one else would. Every attempt to reach them, every ignored message, every returned letter unopened. I watched their expressions change from disbelief to dawning horror. Dad's hands dropped to his knees. All that time, we blocked, I said, finishing his thought. You blocked me. You didn't want to hear it. You chose not to know. And for what? Comfort? Peace? You didn't have peace, you had a blackout. 5 years of pretending your daughter didn't exist. Mom's tears fell freely now. She whispered something I barely heard. Irene, we didn't know. No, you didn't, and now you do. That's all that matters for today. Ruth appeared then, silent but steady, her phone in hand. She showed them screenshots, PDFs, photos of my graduation, of my residency completion. One by one, the evidence filled the room, irrefutable. Mom gasped. Dad didn't say a word, just sank lower in his chair. I stepped back, letting them absorb it, letting the truth settle like a stone in their chests. This wasn't victory. This wasn't reconciliation. This was clarity. 5 years of lies, fear, and silence distilled into moments of truth they couldn't ignore. Finally, my mother's voice broke. Irene, we are so sorry. Sorry doesn't fix the past, I said gently. But it can be the starting point for something else. If you want to be part of my life now, it's on my terms. You rebuild, you make amends, and you listen. No shortcuts. No Monica filters. You hear me, you see me, and you treat me as I am. They nodded, slowly, painfully. Dad's lips pressed together, eyes still avoiding mine. Mom's fingers gripped hers so tightly I thought she might break. But the weight of the moment was no longer mine. It belonged to them now. They had to carry it. And maybe in carrying it, they'd finally understand. The first call from Monica came later that day. Her voice was soft, shaky, unfamiliar. Irene, please, I know, I said. We'll talk. But not now. First you heal. Then we talk. And for the first time in years, I felt the power of my life fully in my hands. Not because I had defeated Monica. Not because I had forced my parents to face the truth, but because I had survived. I had thrived and I had refused to be erased. The rest of the day passed in a blur. ICU rounds, post-op checks, residents shadowing, hippos sprawled across my living room rug. And yet, through every routine, every beep, every patient chart, a quiet satisfaction settled in my chest. This was my world, built from blood, sweat, tears, and refusal to be silenced. And anyone who wanted a piece of it, family included, had to step into it as I allowed. That night, I sat on the porch, coffee in hand, Ipo's head in my lap, looking out at the winter-dark Connecticut streets. The air was cold, crisp, alive. I let it fill me. 5 years of pain didn't vanish, but they had forged me. I was not just a survivor. I was a creator, a healer, a woman who refused to be written out. And for the first time, I realized the story wasn't over. It was just evolving. The next morning, my phone buzzed with Monica's name flashing across the screen. My chest tightened, but I didn't hesitate. I answered. Irene, please, I need to explain, she said, voice trembling. I took a deep breath, keeping my tone calm but firm. Monica, 5 years. 5 years of lies, manipulation, and silence. You need to understand that I'm not the same girl you tried to erase. I survived. I thrived. And now it's your turn to face the consequences of your choices. There was a long pause. I could almost hear her trembling. I never meant to hurt you like this. I wanted to, Stop, I cut her off. Save the excuses. You made your choices. I made mine. And mine was to live. The line went silent and I let it. Silence had always been my weapon and now it was my shield. I could feel Monica realizing for the first time that she no longer had control. Not over me. Not over my life. Later that day, my parents came to my apartment. They were different now, quieter, humbler, carrying the weight of what they had ignored. Mom reached out, and for the first time, I let her hug me. Dad stayed back, but his eyes held something I hadn't seen in years. Respect, regret, and a glimmer of hope. Irene, we'll do better, Mom whispered. You will, I said. But it's on my terms. Nothing less, nothing more. And if you slip, I won't be silent again. The rest of the afternoon passed in a tentative calm. Hippo sprawled on the rug, oblivious to the tension. And I realized something important. Family isn't just blood. It's respect. It's acknowledgement. It's choosing to see each other clearly, not through lies, not through fear. That evening, I walked through the city streets, the winter air sharp against my cheeks. I felt lighter than I had in years. 5 years of silence, betrayal, and isolation had led me here, not just surviving, but standing tall. And I knew something crucial. Life doesn't wait for forgiveness or closure. Life moves forward. And now I moved with it, on my own terms. As I reached the park near my apartment, Hippo tugging at his leash happily, I looked up at the darkening sky. It was vast, endless, full of possibilities I hadn't allowed myself to see before. I smiled, truly smiled, knowing that the story wasn't about Monica, or my parents, or even the years lost. It was about me. And for the first time in a long time, I felt completely free. Because I had finally chosen myself. The past would stay, yes, but it no longer defined me. My voice had returned. My life was mine. And anyone who wanted a place in it had to meet me as I was, strong, unstoppable, alive. And that night, as I closed the door behind me, Hippo curled at my feet. I whispered to no one but myself, Irene Ulette is here. And nothing, not lies, not betrayal, not even fear, can erase her again.